Hello, and thank you again for joining another episode of Intelligence Resources with your hosts, Samantha Viola Wilson and Brittany George.
Welcome, everyone. We've brought on today a really exciting guest, Drew Tyler. So, Drew and I know each other. We go back way, way back to a company like Likes Insurance. And we now have partnered on an exciting project, well funded. We'll get into that. And I'm so excited to bring my two worlds together. Samantha Viola and Drew are actually meeting for the first time today. And we just like to dig in and ask Drew some exciting questions. So let's get in it. So, Drew, I know when we got started, we started talking about AI, and you were just as enthusiastic and as excited as the two of us are about AI. So, how long have you been using AI?
So I'd say probably since it became kind of a buzzy topic, right at the beginning, and you mostly using it for personal use and, helping me make some business things a little bit easier, but didn't really dive into it until probably about a year and a half ago.
Okay, so what were you saying you got in when it became buzzy? So what were you hearing? And I'm assuming the first thing you used was ChatGPT. So what made you say, okay, I want to download that?
Yeah, so I was using it for search, to make things a little simpler. I think a lot of people use it for that now, instead of even going to Google or Safari or whatever browser they use. And so I started using it for that, and then seeing all the different applications of it, and hearing that it's going to change the world and do a million different things and replace everybody's jobs. So I wanted to understand it because obviously, we work in an industry where there's a lot of administrative overload, and I wanted to see how we can make things a little bit simpler and easier on our end. And then I just kind of took it from there.
Yes, and you started your own agency, Altavera Advisors, and you've been in the insurance space for how long? Is it 20 years that you've
Yeah,
been?
gosh, like 15 years now. So long
Okay,
enough.
so long enough. But so you've been in the space for a long time. You started your own agency, and so how do you feel that AI has changed your world in insurance?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different ways. So we're seeing the application of AI when it comes to the things like I mentioned before with administrative tasks. You've used it, I think we've talked about with all things from like spreadsheeting to proposals. And now I think, carriers, as antiquated as they've been, are getting on board with it because they have to. And so I think we're seeing whether it's general agencies, brokers in general in-house use it for a whole number of different things. And now, even the quoting process is getting more simplified so that it's a streamlined activity using AI instead of just, the typical, shotgun approach to all the carriers, get the quotes, spreadsheet up. Now
Mhm.
those can all be done with AI.
Right. And what AI platforms are you using for that, for the administrative tests? Is it solely one, or are you kind of dabbling with a couple of different ones?
Yeah. So I've used a Claude quite a bit with, Anthropic Claude quite a bit. I found that to be the most professional feel that I get the output from, and then, in other settings, I've used it to even help build out like a conversational bot that can handle, large scale call center operations. So,
Wow.
everything down from, kind of the smallest mundane task up to more, conversational, intuitive, generative AI, kind of all over the map there.
That's great. And then when you're building out this other, I guess, division, like you said, like the robotic AI agent, I'm assuming then you're not hiring any additional employees for those activities. This is solely your AI agent that's doing so.
Yeah, no, that project we built in conjunction with an Indian development team. So, we offshored that. And a lot of it, like anything with AI, I found it's all what you put into it. So, they were using a chat GPT based model, and then we were inputting all the data, question banks, etc. And then it was using that information in conjunction with, the web to generate answers to questions that people had with all things benefits related to that, specific project.
Now, is that chat bot, is that sitting on your website, or that's something that's totally different?
No, that was a model that we built out. It's proprietary to the company that I was working on that project with. And originally we built it out just using English. Now I think it has 7 different languages that it can translate to and speak fluently in. And that was a model using the chat GPT, I can't remember which version it was, but it's using ChatGPT as the base, and then all the conversational aspects of that flow through it as an agent.
And now how long did that take from like idea to development to deploy?
Well, it started out as a must because we were like, okay, we can hire 25 call center agents at $25 an hour, or we can look at a cheaper way to do this that might work just as well, and doesn't have time limitations. So we had a team of 3 that worked on it, and using a lot of call data that they were having intake, and then transcribing that, putting those questions and answers into the model and tweaking it constantly. So we are constantly listening to it talk to people to make it a little bit better each day.
And you said you use the developers, those 3 developers are from India?
Yes, those were Indian developers. Brittany and I have gone down this road with our well-funded project, whether or not it's better to use a team that's based here in the US, outside the US, and there's various different pros and cons to that, I think, of both sides. It just kind of depends what you want to do. And, then all the legal aspects that go into that, as we found out.
How interesting.
Yeah. So one of them, we found that, and speaking like with our attorneys was, is there recourse should something go wrong? Because obviously, with any of these projects, there's IP. And so, with that intellectual property comes some legal implications, whether or not those people have a, firm based in the United States and India or Pakistan or wherever they might be, and that's one of those things where it's like, you want to make sure that those issues are taken care of on the front end, not the back end. As we've, I'm sure, all learned throughout our time in insurance. And it's just with AI, it's moving so quickly. So any of these projects, I think, that you work on with a team outside the US, you want to make sure that, the legal documentation, there's recourse should, somebody take an idea or steal part of your IP or your code or whatever is proprietary to that project.
No, right. And with AI moving so quickly, because Brittany and I talked about this in one of our other episodes, you saying like, yes, we're still using other developers, right? Like humans, keeping the human in the loop. But how long do you think that'll stand for before actually fully able to use AI to develop, to developers rather than person?
I would say that it probably has a lot more to do with the regulatory side of things from what I've seen so far. And by that, I mean, um, speaking of things like SOC 2 compliance or HIPAA compliance,
Mhm.
there's a lot of regulation around how that data is stored. It's got to be stored securely. It's got to pass certain tests and audits so that you can show your clients, hey, we've done X, Y, and Z to ensure your data is protected. With that being said, I think we're in this kind of precipice where AI can do a lot of the heavy lifting up front.
Mhm.
And we've been using vibe coding. So kind of to take what we were talking about earlier, went from that project to working on some others in health tech, this well-funded project with Brittany being a big part of that. And the vibe coding can get you so far, but then there are, I think, certain things that you need developers to make sure that all these aspects of an app or program or whatever you're developing work, and that the security features that you need for your specific project are actually going to function properly. And so we've certainly run into that with ours, and that's why we got it to a certain point, where you've got the kind of the bells and whistles and it looks pretty, but then, okay, how does it actually function in the real world when a user actually goes in and starts logging in and tracking things and, putting banking information, all this different stuff that goes into it.
Right.
I mean, when you think about like the human in the loop aspect, we see things come out in insurance that are incorrect. And someone, a lot of people like to enter stuff in to ask the right questions, but they still have to rely on an advisor. Same thing to the house example, buying a home. I asked questions, but I still had to rely on a realtor at this stage. And I feel like it's the same thing with the development. Like I coded it, but we can't read the code. So how do we know if it's done correctly, if it's going to break? And I don't think investors are going to want to buy into something if at the end of the day, we just say we've coded this whole thing. So when you're talking about raising money, I think it's important that you do have a team behind that understands how it's been built, not just, 2 people who know insurance really well who coded it all. Yeah. Um,
Just like in insurance, there's so many different acronyms and jargon and stuff. And we've learned a lot about what those terms mean in the tech world. And so, kind of getting up to speed with that and making sure like, okay, this is an MVP, which can translate to an actual working application is like the gulf is pretty big between those two things.
yeah, because in our world, insurance MVP means minimum value plan, and they kept throwing out MVP, and finally Drew asked the question. He's like, "Wait, pause. What does MVP mean?"
Yeah.
So, Drew, when we were originally speaking, we were having a phone call, and what inspired us to join on this project, you were already developing a separate app. Tell me a little bit about the app that you were building that then inspired us to partner on Well Funded.
Sure. Yeah. So this was another kind of health tech related app. Try to try to stay in the realm of health insurance and tech combining. So this was an app that I was developing or am developing with a dentist to assist dental practices with their ongoing needs for post-op care. So whether a patient has a question and generally they're calling into the office. Those staff members usually can't answer the questions because they're not dentists or medical providers. So they have to then stop and grab the dentist, go ask the question, which just kind of constantly interrupts the day. So that's one aspect of it. And the other is just the ability for dental practice to additionally monetize their practice through, sales of different supplies and things people might need. And assist those patients with a lot of different things they might have questions about regarding whatever procedure or dental care that they have currently going on.
And I know
Mhm.
you've been playing this point in AI. What made you say, I think I could build you an app?
Well, actually, that's kind of funny because I have another really close friend who's built a great business in the vending machine space. So he's been using AI and coding, especially with Claude Code. He moved from using vibe coding with Lovable, taught himself a lot of stuff, and started putting all of this stuff into Claude Code to the point where he was able to really no longer use his outsourced Indian development team to help build that project. And so I'm talking to him, I'm like, like, I feel like I'm pretty smart. I can figure this out. So I went on to started using Base 44, which he had recommended, and Lovable, and started, just typing my ideas in. And I was so impressed with what it puts out. Not necessarily from like the ins and outs of the app, kind of like we were talking about before, but just really like, the ease of use of it, and also just how user friendly it is, and also like what it actually generates. So I use it to build my website. And, you and I had talked about this where people spend thousands and thousands of dollars to build a website. And I'm like, check mine out. I did this, I think, in 15 minutes, obviously spent some more time on it to this point. I think the ease of use of it is very empowering for people because you can take an idea and then very quickly have it become something that's, visual and folks can actually see.
Mm. And do you mind just sharing, like, if you were to make an app nowadays, like the old way versus how you're doing it on Lovable, like, what's the price range difference?
Oh gosh. So I was quoted out to build an app minimum of like $75,000. And that was for something that was much more basic than the couple of projects, that we're talking about or that I've worked on. And that doesn't include like the ongoing administration and work that needs to go on with the app when things break because they just do. So, so I would say, the cost of like Base 44 Lovable, you're looking at like $50 a month to
Oh, wow.
build something that is, you could get it to almost like investor ready. And then you certainly have to raise money to get that app to, a user friendly, secure app. But yeah, the cost difference is massive.
And what about the production time frame? From like versus, again, the old methodology to now. Is it like a day you just put in your thoughts and that's it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I love about it is you can take an idea, you can put it in there, and like you're driving down the road, something pops up, and you can pull up your phone and type it in, add some things to it as you go along. So it continues to be a working, living, breathing, very functionable application that I think has helped a lot of people build things to a certain point.
Mhm. And now, so how many have you built now?
Yeah, so I'd say one is probably like in the earlier stages. Our project, well funded, is a little bit further along, like where we're actively engaging developers, but that would be the kind of fourth version of something that I've built.
And let's talk about the website, 'cause I think that was an interesting thing that a lot of people would like to hear about. A lot of people don't have good websites. Maybe they're paying someone that's really expensive. When you built your first website, how surprised were you when you're walking through the process of how easy it was?
Oh my gosh, like from what people have been doing in the past and the money that's spent, websites I've built in the past, the weeks of time back and forth with, web builder is absolutely crazy. So for those purposes, I would say AI is definitely taking those jobs. And you can
Yeah.
see it. You see all the ads on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, for people to build a website. And I'm 100% sure they just go into one of these vibe coding sites and build it out. And then obviously you've got to add the security features and stuff to those sites. But I mean, it's something that I continue to tweak,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, probably the initial ideas I put into it, you're dropping documents and different stuff in there. I mean, it was like 15 minutes.
I think
Wow.
all three of us here have built a website. So let's all talk about what sites, what we've used, what platforms. So for me, I've used Manus primarily for building websites. I have also used Claude. And what about you, Drew? What have you used for building a website?
Yeah. So for websites, I started using Claude and ChatGPT. I've used Gemini a little bit. It seems to be better, like image generation, for whatever reason. Plus, I don't pay for it. I know I've listened to several of your podcasts. You're talking about like the tokenization of everything. And, Claude gets to be very expensive at a certain level. I found it's like a combination of things, but the easiest, fastest way to build a working website I found is either using Lovable or Base 44.
Okay. And Samantha, you've used Manus, right? Is that the main one that you've used?
Yeah, so I've done 3 now on Manus. I did try to actually enhance hours on both Manus versus also Claude because I keep on seeing these ads on on Instagram where it is so futuristic, and I'm like, I want ours to be like really cool and animated. And it seems that that is a combination of Claude versus Higgsfield. I'm not sure if either of you have heard of Higgsfield,
Yeah.
but apparently that's a plugin to Claude. I'm actually going to see if we can do so using Madison Higgsfield, but apparently that's where like you see those really crazy 3D imagery of like development projects and websites and such. So I'm going to try that and I'll definitely report back when I do. I just haven't had the time. But I think I've shared in here before, like when I've tried the Claude, they just weren't able to do the really, really cool 3D. But what I am starting to feel is that you can tell now what's an AI website versus not, because I feel as if the templates of what I've seen are kind of the same. Have you guys felt like that at all, or have you noticed that?
I haven't really been staring at people's websites that much recently, to be quite honest, but
Yeah.
no, I haven't noticed that, to be
Okay.
honest.
Like I've had some friends, that have shown me theirs. I'm like, oh, mine looks very similar. Like the fonts are similar. If you look at her consulting, ANC management, I have a prototype of when she's going. They have the heading to the left, right? And then it just kind of feels like it flows. And also it's one of those where like the homepage, the tabs on the top, the homepage goes down to one section, which I actually like. I think that's the future of websites, but I have noticed kind of a little bit of a trend
It's
with
like the LinkedIn post. You can tell when someone has went in and said, "Write me a LinkedIn post today," and they all look exactly the same. I
yes,
feel like
yes.
40% of LinkedIn posts are now AI generated, and it's AI slop, So, now I'm gonna start paying more attention
Yeah,
to
but
that.
that being said, I still think they look much better than the basic website.
What we had before.
Yeah, yeah, but I wanna bring ours to the next level, so that's when I have free time, I don't know when, but I'm gonna try the big field one because I think it'd be really cool to design.
So I found out Drew was gatekeeping. He actually comes from a techie lineage. So his dad has a tech background. He randomly drops this last week. He's like, should I have my dad look at some stuff? So it was just a surprising thing. So Drew, tell me, so you grew up with your dad being tech. So you're a little bit more probably tech savvy than I would say a Brittany George of the world. I'm sure you've had coffee talks and things with your dad about the technology in his world. Well, I'll let you tell us a little bit about your dad, what he does, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So he's retired now, so he's kind of enjoying life. But he and my uncle built a platform that was designed for like Department of Defense contracting, and so it was all built around like anonymous bidding. So there's a lot of security protocols that went into this. They actually partnered with a guy who was building out the security protocols for NASA, and they both had tech background previous to that, and then obviously continued. It was really interesting growing up listening to him. Like my mom would go to Bora Bora and I would go to Baltimore, and he and I would like rebuild computers. I thought just to have a second set of eyes that's been through these things and built stuff. And especially with AI, he has a lot of feelings about it. He talked to me about how he thinks, well, that they've used versions of AI in the past, and it's just a much more robust kind of version of what has been built for a very long time in terms of how, the conversation goes with it. And, you guys have probably noticed like when you talk to an AI platform, how it kind of gives you these rah responses, and like kind of gets you jacked up. And I prefer it not to do that because it seems like a waste of time.
So you had said your dad retired about how long ago?
I'd say a few years ago.
So when you have coffee talks and chats with your dad about, the world of AI and, because he's kind of out of it, but I'm sure not so much out of it because none of us could ignore it. You kind of alluded to it, but you didn't really share too much of his general feelings of where the tech world is going.
Well, I think like as most like retired guys probably do, he goes to like the more philosophical and like political side of things about how, the importance of it or not. And so, you kind of have to like wade through some of that first. But I think that he feels like there's a big application in a lot of different ways for it. But I do think that, as he said, when I talked about, our project with him, it's like an old set of eyes that's probably a little outdated, for the coding and things, but, because those languages change and update constantly. I think he thinks it's kind of a repackaged version of stuff that just happens to work better because the computing power is better.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Coding. What does he think about the fact that you come out and you're like, "Hey, Dad, now I'm building an app."
Does he think you're sure? Is he like, "You did it before, now you're doing it?"
Well, I mean, he kind of has like maybe a little bit sarcastic view of it, but he does like that, I'm doing something I think that in the tech world, it's not easy to do. It's like I was saying, it's like learning a language to some degree. And then it's how far do you want to take it? So I noticed with the vibe coding, like there's only so far you can go. And so in order to get up to speed, you really got to dig in a little bit more and understand. So like I've got terminals open and I'm doing stuff that I had no idea how to do 3, 4, 5 months ago, which I think is pretty cool. And you're kind of trying to stay as far ahead as you can with also then, doing your core business and, trying to make money too. Go down the rabbit hole.
So now, when you say vibe coding, can you just share an example of like how you're vibe coding in the terminal? Is that using Claude Code and you're just doing your work on the side? You prompted to do something and let it just kind of rock, and then you're pressing one.
Yeah. So initially I was just doing it with Unlovable Base 44 and just kind of telling it what I wanted to look and feel, dropping some examples in there for it. I think it's really helpful to give it context and also tell it what to do very specifically to what you want it to do.
Hmm.
And so I kind of took that and then have added some more flavor to that with Claude Code. And yeah, I'd say, I'm not getting down in the weeds of like deciphering code and typing the code in, but I am, getting more specific about exactly, what I'm putting in there, what I want it to do, how I want it to do it, and those kinds of things. So I think with anything AI, it's, crap in, crap out. So you've got to really direct it exactly how you want it to work, and it will
Hmm.
do a good job at that. And I've also found like it's really good, and you guys may have seen this from like the agentic AI side. It's really good at doing one task. So, it's not good at doing an email marketing campaign, follow-ups, and, all the other things that go into that. You have to have one agent that's doing like an email marketing, and then the other one is doing follow-ups. The other one is scanning your inbox and putting tasks together. And then it seems to work well, in conjunction with one another. But trying to have it do all things does not work as well.
I agree. So how many agents do you have right now working for you?
Uh, right now, I have two that are doing email marketing campaigns.
Okay. And now what platform are you using that through? Is
Uh,
that
So initially I was using a platform called RevHero, and they were developing AI stuff, as we went along. It was kind of a more basic, I think, email marketing system. And then with a local realtor that I know in town, he had built out 3 or 4 different agents and was doing a bunch of A/B testing with them. So I kind of started playing around with what he was using, and most of those are built using Claude.
I've been building mine through OpenClaw.
Okay.
So when
Yep.
you're doing them through Claude, is it a scenario where you're going and using the Claude work?
Yeah. Claude co-work for sure. And then, I just use the project part of Claude a lot. So that way it doesn't eat up as many tokens. And I have the memory on so that it can go back and reference prior chats and things. I was listening to a interview with a couple different people in MSNBC. And, one of them was a CEO of Palantir. And he said, look, like, if you're a business and you're building something that's proprietary, you need to remember that the AI platforms like Chat and Claude are taking your information, and the way their business models are work is that they're waiting for you to come up with a great idea. So you need to be really careful about how you put proprietary information into those systems.
That makes sense. We talked about this last time, right, Brittany? And I was like, I think that what if we had our own like AI sign an NDA for us so that when we're talking about ideas, they just go and tell it.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
I know.
I think that more as a joke because I don't think that I think you're going to get anything from that. Hey, dear open clause, sign this NDA.
Listen, it's worth a shot.
Well, it's been a week, Samantha. Why haven't you done that? And so that's the thing I love about AI is where we are. Like you can learn so much and so much quicker. So I think that some people are using it and they're refusing to think. But some of us use AI and it is a way for us to become smarter and allow us to learn things that we maybe never knew about in the past. So with that, Drew, tell us like with the well-funded project specifically, because I don't think this is something that you or I would have even dreamed of doing pre-AI world. So beyond just obviously the techie stuff of we can develop an app, when it goes to like the actual process, where do you think AI has been helping you and us through this process?
Yeah, I'd say in a number of different ways. The first one would be, for us to develop things that we can give to developers that would be, production ready documents that they can then take and put something together for us. We didn't know all these acronyms and terms and different things in the tech world. So we could communicate the insurance stuff to them. But it was really difficult. I think, there's like a learning curve. Like you said, it helps you get up to speed a lot faster. So I think that's one area. The other is, kind of just in the development initially, it would have taken so much longer for us, and we would have had to hire a web developer just to put a website together. This way, you can get something that's like, pre-launch ready that can at least tease the idea and generate some buzz. Whereas before, you're probably talking about like a month or two to get to that point. So that's been extremely helpful for us. It just can do a lot of stuff very quickly. And I think that's helpful. I do notice, and I'm sure you do too, that it does make a lot of errors also. We've talked about this with regards to spreadsheet. Like you have to keep your eyes on it and double check some of its work because it's not always 100% accurate.
Yeah, nothing's worse than going out with a spreadsheet that you just yesterday this happened to me. I had a spreadsheet. My client, we were going back and forth and he was like, well, what would happen if we just changed the enrollment, moved, the executives into this plan? And I was like, oh, let me do it really quick. And it was so fast because I was back to back yesterday, but I wanted him to have it before he went in with his owner. So I didn't have the chance to check it. So shame on me. If he put in negative numbers, he highlighted, sent it back to me, he goes, what are the negative? Like, why is it having negatives? So I was like, instead of it says me like 20 people, it was negative people. I'm like, don't know why it's interesting. Probably my prompt, I guess. I don't know. You do have to have eyes on AI for sure. And sometimes it's the prompt and sometimes it's just pure hallucination. I never dreamed of trying to raise money, invest. It's not something I've ever done before, and it can be very scary and overwhelming. But I think that it gives me the confidence that I can walk into this and we can do it. Obviously, lots of people have done this before, and just kind of seeing the process, so we know we know how to approach it, and what kind of people we should be going to. What kind of people we should be avoiding. We want to have strategic partnerships. We're not really looking to have new bosses. our vision ultimately is important, but just kind of knowing how to navigate this whole process. AI has been able to coach us through. So asking the right questions, reading through it, prepping ahead of some of these lawyer calls, these developer calls. I mean, there's a lot. So we're not only leaning on AI for advice, but it's helping us to, lawyers are charging us by the hour. We want to make sure that we're maximizing the time that we have with them. And then when they give us stuff back that we can parse through these lengthy documents.
Have you shared with the lawyers that you are using AI for some of like what you've done already before giving it to them? And what has been your feedback, if so? Were they open
So
to it? A little.
So I actually am friends with our lawyer. He's become a really good friend. We'll probably have him on podcast now. He's actually goes up to Washington and does lobbying. Is really focused on how AI is going to impact the future. But I'm the first person who ever brought AI up to him. So when I downloaded ChatGPT for the first time after the Abundance 360 event, and I brought it up to him, how far it's come, but he admits it internally in every office, they're using AI. Like they are using less paralegals. So his worry is that the junior people aren't going to have that time to really train to become true lawyers. I think he's just like us, feels like right now, like you obviously have to have a lawyer still as a part of it, but he thinks that it's valuable for them. It's obviously cutting down on the need for paralegals. It's cutting down the time that things take. So, when I spoke to you last week about an attorney taking a month to get something together, it's sort of outrageous for that to happen in this day and age, given that what I know with John and what he's learned. You've talked to others as well. I know you have attorney friends. That's what our general feedback has been, is that no one has a problem. I mean, I don't think anybody wants us to execute an agreement that they haven't had eyes on. I don't think that any lawyer would, rubber stamp that. But I think that they think it's fine for us to use as a general like coach on the side to get prepared with questions.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. And like to your point about the junior associates of those law firms, I would venture to guess that a lot of large corporate law firms are reducing the headcounts there because AI can do so much research, in that, kind of more administrative role, like it's probably diminished. And then it does impact their ability to, confidently communicate a lot of the legal stuff that they need to do probably down the road. I'm sure that's a concern of more senior attorneys.
The
Right.
thing I hear that a lot of people say is AI makes mistakes, AI makes mistakes. But what we always fail to remember is so do
Humans.
paralegals,
Yeah.
junior people, new employees coming out, they're all going to make mistakes. So it's acting like humans are perfect and AI is this flawed thing. I think that of course where it is today, it does make mistakes. It does need experts involved. I could go back and forth because I spoke about my friend who completely doesn't think AI is going to be a problem. It's never going to take his job. So we kind of like battle him depending on the day. Sometimes his brain creeps into me, and it happens to happen when AI is failing me. On Saturday, I was putting together a benefit guide, and I wanted to scream as it was just getting worse and worse by the minute. And I'm like, wait, this is never going to take my job. He's right.
It's funny because I was reading a LinkedIn post the other day, and it was a senior attorney, he's a partner of his firm, and he was talking about how one of the associates had used AI to kind of condense this whole like 50-page document down to like, bullet points. And he said, our clients don't pay us for the simplicity. They're paying us to take this complex problem and sometimes keep it that way. And so he's like, I want you to make this document again. And so she came back with the solution to whatever the problem was on like page 43 of the document. He sent it off to the client, and the client was like, oh my gosh, this was so great. Like all this information. It's a lot of people use it to make things concise, but you can also use it to make things really, really complex and very deep. So it depends what your application is, but yeah.
Right. So my brother actually handles mergers and acquisitions for one of the largest court reporting companies. And he did agree. He said that the paralegals will most likely be the ones that are out of the jobs, not the lawyers. But what he did say, which I found very interesting, is that the AI is actually able to detect when someone seems to be lying or contradicting a statement that they may have made prior. And that I was like, wow. I thought that was a pretty interesting, concept that it's adding to the current layout that we had prior. And he also is using the enterprise Claude model, and he did say it's very, very expensive. Of humans make errors just like AI. However, I think it comes to more of who can change a behavior and learn from those lessons faster. Is it going to be a human where you're kind of teaching an old dog new tricks, or is it going to be the AI that can kind of adapt and fix those errors faster? And I kind of feel like it's going to be the AI, because humans don't like always change, right? But I feel like the AI, it doesn't really have the feelings or the ego as much as humans do.
I I would love to see where we are in maybe 10 years if we end up having jurors that are
Um,
AI, or if we have AI coming in as part of a court case that says this person was lying. I mean, what is it today? Are we able to have lie detector tests? Do they count? Is it by state, or is there a federal law on whether or not if they're accurate or not? But it would be interesting if at some point we have AI jurors.
I would not personally want that. Although I know humans are going to be getting stupider when they're relying more on AI, but I don't trust necessarily different types of AI platforms. Like we've spoken about this, some are more neutral in terms of politics, some are a little bit more left or more right leaning. So that I think would be a very scary, scary day.
At the end of the day, you're right. Like there's a lean depending on who put the model together for sure.
I wish it wasn't that way. I wish it wasn't based on bias as we're seeing, and it could be more agnostic. But I don't know if that's even possible to create it that way. Maybe that's a dream.
Or maybe it's also a way that we prompt it. Yeah,
We always like to close our podcast, Drew, with what have you done this week? We've talked a lot about what you've done professionally. So let's lean into a use case that you've had with AI in your personal life outside of business.
Okay, so I I I was up at a pickleball tournament and I haven't really been playing as much as I normally do. So I took a couple videos of me playing and plugged it into AI and said, I want you to analyze some things. And it was pretty cool what it pumps out from a criticism standpoint. It wasn't as rah-rah as I maybe would have liked it to be, but it's probably honest coaching, which is great.
that is.
And say it was needed. It didn't help, but it was pretty cool.
What was that you put it into?
So that one, I put it into Claude and then I put it into Gemini just to see the difference from what it told me. And Gemini was like a little bit more like, oh yeah, you're doing really great. You could, tweak this. Claude was a little more direct, which I kind of told it to be because I was like, treat this like you're like a pro pickleball coach. That's
All
actually
right.
really good. So, but it was helpful, like in what it pointed out.
Mm. I've actually tried to put videos into Claude and in ChatGPT, and it wouldn't let me. What version do you have? Because
So
why
on Claude,
it
I
might
was
be.
doing like more still. I was just still photos actually, not
Oh,
not
okay.
video. On Gemini, I did put a video in, and like, I'm using the free version of Gemini, so it's not like I'm paying a lot for that. The stills were enough with Claude to like say, like, okay, angle of this is not right or whatever.
That's a great idea. I like that.
When I was at the pickleball tournament, there was an app that these folks have developed, which you can get AI coaching, and the prompts and like the different shots and things that are programmed and behind it are from pro pickleball players, and then it'll help you connect with other pickleball players and stuff. So, anyways, I thought that was kind of cool that they had developed something like that.
I think they have something like that for golf. Am I
I'm sure.
mistaken?
It
Yeah.
seems they could do that for every sport.
Well, Drew, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast, and we looking forward to continuing to build things together because this has been quite a journey.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to see what we can put together with Bowl Funded and get it out into the market.
Awesome.
All right. Congratulations on everything done so far. And thank you again for being on.
Thanks, guys.